this thing when it goes. Hello, this is Greg Allison, Green Greg's, coming to you on 19 September 22. Time on deck is 1100 hours Central Daylight Time. My friends, I'm bringing you a special guest tonight, Louis Valdes of Gun Owners of America. And tonight we're talking about a very hot topic, the restrictions on credit card sales for gun owners. There's new restrictions that have come out, and what do we do about it? You know, it looks like we got all kind of new tracking and things coming up. And this is even before they come out with some central bank digital currency, my friends. So I'll give you tonight Louis Valdes. Louis is the state director for Florida's Gun Owners of America operation. Louis, tell us about this. What is going on with these credit cards?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on your show. And to reiterate, I'm the state director. I'm the Florida State Director for Gun Owners of America. And for your viewers that don't know who we are the only no compromise gun rights lobby, both in Tallahassee and in Washington, D.C. and across the country. In reality, we're a national organization. So we have state directors all across the country. We have regional directors. We have federal directors. We are fighting tooth and nail against any and all encroachments on the Second Amendment. So what's going on with credit card purchases right now is real simple. The credit card and banking industry has basically decided to specifically categorize and codify gun purchases. The best way to describe it is if you go to your local gun shop and you make a credit card purchase for a firearm, some of the banking institutions or credit card companies, they're going to specifically codify and catalog that transaction in a separate database. So then they could keep track of of people's purchasing habits. And as I've said repeatedly over the years, the government doesn't need to directly track each firearm. What they need to track is each individual. And the biggest danger of this is on a federal level, we've had, since the Firearm Owners Protection Act passed in 1986, it specifically states that the federal government cannot have a registry list of guns or gun owners. But the danger with this is it's not the government doing it, it's private industry. And this could literally become part of the textbook definition of fascism, where you have big government on one side and big business on the other side, working hand in hand to violate your individual civil rights.
That's kind of like the FBI and working with social media and Department of Justice and all these things that we've been seeing.
Very much so. So the danger with this is to reiterate, there's a lot of moving pieces going on right now. My organization, GOA, we actually discovered back in 2019 that the FBI, for instance, was going around and having individuals sign documentation to literally blacklist themselves from the National Instant Criminal Check System, the background check system, to blacklist themselves from being able to purchase a firearm. Now, what was happening is the FBI was investigating social media posts, criminal complaints of threats made against public officials and such. They would gather information, they would present it to the U.S. State Attorney's Office, and most of the time, the AUSAs that would review these cases would decline to prosecute because there wouldn't be enough probable cause. So the FBI would then go to these individuals and say, hey, look, if you want us to stop bugging you, sign this piece of paper, make yourself to where you can't purchase a firearm, and we'll leave you alone. So you have that. Another instance is you have the federal government. They just went to Missouri recently, and they requested the entire list of concealed carry permit holders in Missouri. We already know that the FBI and the NSA and other federal law enforcement agencies and state law enforcement agencies, that they track social media posts, they track spending habits, they track all of that. So, and the other thing that we discovered organizationally is, you know what a 4473 is, correct?
That's the form you file when you apply to purchase, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's the background form. So if you go to a federal firearms dealer, that's the background form you have to fill out during the purchasing of a firearm. ATF revised the 4473 form to where both your personal information and the firearm information is on the front page. And they did that for a specific reason. So, and I forget the fancy nomenclature, but it's an OCR, I believe it stands for, or ORC, optical ready compliant, I forget. But basically it turns it into a scannable, searchable PDF. And ATF has been caught basically red-handed admitting that their entire digitization of these 4473 records is going into a system that is not searchable. And it's not searchable because literally the only thing that's stopping it is that feature in the administrative side of the program has not been turned on. So all it is they just need someone in IT to go and literally into the system, flick the switch, the virtual switch, and make it a searchable database. So you have that. You have the credit card information now. You have the bank information. You have the federal government pulling concealed carry permit records from Missouri and other states. How many other states have they pulled records from?
Wow.
You know, in Florida, for instance, we have over 2 million active CCW permits.
Yeah, I had one of those.
So that's a major threat to civil liberties, because this is literally putting the cart before the horse where it comes to due process. You have such a large scale of information being collated and tabulated and categorized. And why do they want this information? That is the biggest question I ask. And I say this as a 15-year veteran law enforcement officer. When it comes to criminal investigations, and look, I understand, you know, there needs to be a way for law enforcement to do a legitimate criminal investigation. And I'm not opposing that. We're not opposing that. What we're opposing is the idea of having the individual civil liberties of Americans violated to make law enforcement's job supposedly easier. But here's the thing, it's not easier. It's just they're building a database, and it's scary because this database could be used to infringe upon civil liberties. And it's not the first time we've seen it in regards to the Second Amendment. We could go throughout history in this country alone on the state level where we've seen numerous states politically persecute certain segments of society because they were gun owners or they want to be gun owners. Most states' entire gun laws are rooted in racism, especially in Florida. I mean, in Florida's case, after the Civil War ended and the Union Army pulled out, the first thing the Democrats did when they regained control of the legislature was rewriting the state constitution. And it says, you have the right to keep and bear arms, but, comma, the legislature has the right to regulate the method of carry. And in 1941, we had a state Supreme Court case, Watson v. Stone, where I'm not making the Chief Justice's name up. He is not an extra from the Dukes of Hazzard. Justice Buford Rutherford, Rutherford Buford, that's his name. And to paraphrase his opinion from this case, oh yeah, I know of this law. We never intended it to be applied against white folks, only against black people. And they did that through categorizing and cataloging gun owners, because at the time then, just as now, if you want to carry a firearm, you have to get a government issued permit. And that is a way that you could politically persecute people, because remember, a right delayed is a right denied. So the federal government building this entire database, it's quite scary, because what are they wanting to do with it? Are they wanting to basically deny firearm purchases? Because ATF has repeatedly stated multiple times that there isn't a magic number to declare someone as being a collector versus being an unlicensed dealer. What stops ATF from, or the FBI from declaring me to be an unlicensed dealer if I decided to get a hair and purchase 20 different firearms in a month because I saw a Band of Brothers and I want to get an M1 Garand and a German K98, an M1 carbine, and 1911, and an M1917, you know, so on and so on and so forth. What's to stop them from saying, oh, well, you know, that's looking suspicious, let's investigate him, when I'm doing absolutely nothing criminal?
Yeah, good question. So what we really worry about is this is going to be their hook to come collecting, that they would use this to come take what we got. And that's something we worry about. We worry about our rights. We worry about our freedoms. We worry that they are going to come knocking on our doors. Oh yeah, you're here. You're on this list. We know what you got. Give them up. What do you think?
Yeah, and we've even seen that. We've saw, I believe it was in Delaware. I don't remember the state because I don't have it right in front of me. But there was an instance where an ATF agent went out with a state trooper to a guy's house because he purchased a couple of firearms, and they were literally on his porch saying, "Hey, just bring the guns out so we could verify the serial numbers that you still have them." You know, that's a violation of due process. That's a violation of someone's civil rights. That's a fishing trip.
Yeah, I've seen that video.
Yep.
I've seen the video. That's pretty bad. That one's made its rounds, and you know what? Who? I don't know. That's just awful. And we need to stand up against officials that do stuff like that. When a force puts something like that out, then that needs to be known to the public. And that's something, especially if a sheriff's an elected office. If his deputies are doing that, that needs to be brought up in the campaign, and they shouldn't get away with that stuff.
Well, the danger with sheriffs and the belief of them being in elected office, it depends on the jurisdiction in the state. In some states, sheriffs are a constitutional office. In other states, sheriffs really have little to no power. So it really depends on what state and what jurisdiction you're in. But even then, like in Florida, for instance, a lot of people know Sheriff Grady Judd out of Polk County, very pro-patriotic, claims to be pro-gun. He is one of the largest enforcers of red flag orders in the state of Florida. But by God, you put him in front of a camera, he acts like he is the best Second Amendment advocate that exists in the state.
And he's be called out on that. I mean, that's why we need organizations, Gun Owners America, even our Freedom Restoration Foundation. We need organizations that will call people out and shine a light on them when they step afar like that, because there are a lot of people that are running on an image. The image is over here, but the reality is over here. We see it a lot. And you pointed out to me in a previous conversation. Tell me what you said about your supermajority there in Florida and what they do.
So for a lot of people that are outside of Florida, everyone thinks Florida is this bastion of freedom. I'm going to tell you the truth. Here's the problem. Florida is under a Republican supermajority. The Democrats have no control legislatively whatsoever. They can't do anything in the legislature. They can't. But here's the honest truth. Out of 50 states, 47 states have open carry in one form or another. Florida, New York, and Illinois have an outright ban on open carry. 25 states have constitutional carry. Florida is not one of them. Alabama and Georgia do. That means every tourist that drives to Florida to visit Disney World and Universal Studios and our beaches and so on, they will be driving through a constitutional carry jurisdiction. But when they get in Florida, that won't be the case. Now, the biggest issue with that is we have Republicans that blocked constitutional carry 3 years in a row. The bill never got even a single vote in committee. And this was done under Republican legislative leadership. Now, Governor DeSantis this year, starting in April, has publicly called for the passage of constitutional carry, which is fantastic. And that happened because organizationally, Gun Owners of America put pressure on the governor and said, look, we know you want to run in 2024. Your political primary challengers like Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. I forget the governor's name out of Ohio. I believe it's DeWine or DeWitt. And of course, your governor, Governor Ivey, they've all signed constitutional carry into law. You're going to be running against these individuals in 2024. If you want to look good on the 2A front, you have to push for constitutional carry. And the governor has, and I'm honestly grateful for that. And even going further back in 2018, when he was running for the first time, He even said back then, if he was governor in 2018, this was right after Parkland, mind you, he said he would have vetoed the Parkland gun control bill. Now, mind you, the Parkland gun control bill was passed by Republican supermajority. In 16 days, in the middle of our legislative session, Florida's legislative session is only for 60 days. And that year in 2018, it started in January and it was going to end in March. In February, after Valentine's Day, so mind you, this is going towards the tail end. It only took them 16 days from introducing the biggest gun control bill Florida has ever seen to passing it. And it was passed by a Republican supermajority and signed into law by a Republican governor, then Governor Rick Scott, who's now a senator in Congress.
Wow. Wow.
And that's the biggest issue. So here in Florida,
you got a lot of rhinos in Florida then.
Very much so. But I want your viewers to take Florida as an example for their own states. Just because someone has a Republican R next to their name on the ballot doesn't mean they're pro-gun. And even if they campaign to be pro-gun, doesn't mean they're pro-gun. Because we could use our current Senate President, Wilton Simpson, as a fine example. He right now is campaigning for the Commissioner of Agriculture. He's term limited in the Senate. He's running for another state office. Now, Commissioner of Agriculture, it doesn't really sound like an important position, right? Well, in Florida, that position runs our state concealed carry permit system.
Wow.
He's the guy that wrote the Parkland gun control bill. He's the guy that said Florida needs red flag laws. Florida needs to ban firearm sales to anyone under the age of 21. Florida needs to ban bump stocks and binary triggers. And Florida needs to institute a mandatory 3-day waiting period across the state for handguns and long gun purchases. And this is the guy who's campaigning right now as a Republican saying, I'm pro-gun, vote for me, for the very position that runs the concealed carry permit system. What would happen if the federal government goes to him and says, hey, we want a list of Florida's concealed carry permit holders? What do you think would happen? You think he'll turn it over?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is crucial why constitutional carry is vitally important, because it's an enumerated, inalienable right. Remember, the Constitution doesn't grant rights. The Constitution simply enumerates. It lists rights that are inalienable, rights that you're born with.
And we have
the right to,
what's a binary trigger?
A binary trigger is an accessory. It came from professional shotgun shooting. So most triggers,
Just like a set trigger?
It's kind of like a set trigger, but it's different. So for a lot of professional trap and skeet shooters, the shotgun doesn't go off when you pull the trigger. The shotgun goes off when you let go of the trigger. So with someone developed that for an AR-15, so basically it allows you to have a higher cyclic rate, but still have the firearm as a semi-automatic firearm. So it's not in violation of federal law, of the 1986 machine gun ban and the 1934 National Firearms Act. So that's what it is. It's an accessory for AR-15s and Ruger 1022s and other firearms. But going back to the topic at hand, this is why constitutional carry is vitally important, because it's an inalienable right. It's a right you're born with. So you don't need a government permission slip to exercise your Second Amendment rights. You should be able to legally exercise those rights simply because you're a law-abiding citizen and you're legally able to own a firearm.
Second Amendment should be our permit. The Second Amendment is there. There's a coin out there I see advertising a couple of YouTube channels that like Next News Networks. It says the Second Amendment is my permit.
Yep.
So yeah,
ain't that the truth? But that's the issue. That's the current issue with gun rights. That's the current issue here in Florida. Again, Governor DeSantis has been, for the most part, proactive on gun rights, but we have a Republican legislative majority that has been very squishy. This past session alone, We had one state representative up in the Panhandle, actually kind of near the state border. She's out in Okaloosa, Escambia County area. Her name is Representative Michelle Salzman, and she was caught on video literally saying, oh yeah, I support constitutional carry, but it's not the right time because the legislative leadership's against it, and I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me.
Oh my God.
We had that instance. We had this past legislative session, the committee chair where constitutional carry was assigned. We delivered Second Amendment petitions in support of constitutional carry, and his legislative office was caught red-handed throwing those signed petitions in the trash. Mind you, these are all Republicans. So that's why it's vitally important for your listeners and your viewers to be politically proactive. Voting reliably, great, cool. Hold your elected officials' feet to the fire. Go to the Capitol, go to their district offices, and go to their town hall events, go to their speaking events, and ask them those hard questions. Where do you stand on this? And you know what? Videotape it. It's completely legal. It's a public setting. There's no expectation of privacy in a political campaign or town hall event.
Amen.
You know, put them on the spot, because the greatest disinfectant is sunshine. And when you shine light, man, it's like when you flick the switch in the kitchen, the roaches flee.
Amen. Need some light. Absolutely. I kind of mentioned that in a lot of my channels here. Let's see. Gary says, unfortunately, the voting process has been corrupted. He says beyond repair. Well, I think if enough of us jump on it, we could work that. But we really got to jump on it and shine these spotlights on things. Yeah, personally, I try not to use a credit card for anything. I have people I go to get my sources. So if I need, this video, there's no way I can use code language because the topic we're talking about. But usually when I do a video, I call the gun a nug, and I feed those nugs kibbles. They get hungry. So I have a source for my nug feed. Nugs and nug feed.
Yeah. Well, look, the biggest thing of all of this is people think that this will reduce crime. It's already been proven it doesn't reduce crime. We can look at New York and California as prime examples. Both California and New York on the state level require every firearm purchase to go through an authorized state dealer where background is done, it's recorded, the firearm transaction is registered. Has there been a reduction in crime in either state? No.
Look at Chicago.
Last I checked, crime is up 15 to 20% in Los Angeles alone. Chicago, for a very long time, was the murder capital of the country. New York City, crime is skyrocketing. Criminals don't care. They break the law. That's why they're criminals.
Exactly. Why don't anybody get that when the guns are outlawed? Only outlaws will have guns, of course. Have them. I mean, it becomes like a drug trade. I mean, you're just suddenly giving the gangs extra source of income. The gangs, probably nobody would like to see gun control more than criminal gangs, because now they got a new revenue source, and also the populace will be unarmed, so they're going to have a lot easier time going out and mugging and mauling and robbing and looting.
Going back to Chicago, the state of Illinois has what's called the FOID, the Firearm Owner's Identification Card. You have to have a specific permit just to own a firearm, let alone carry a firearm. And the idea is that, this means the individual has to get a background check and the individual has to jump through hoops and all. It hasn't reduced crime. It hasn't reduced anything. California, again, every firearm purchase has to be registered with the state. They call it I think it's called a DROS, DROS. I forget what the abbreviation is, but you have to fill one of those out and everything is cataloged. And as we know in New York, you have to get a permit just to own a firearm. God forbid you live in New York City you really have to be lucky to get a permit to own a firearm, let alone carry a firearm. And even with the Bruin decision, we see how the state of New York is already trying to sidestep that and violate individual civil liberties.
What do the gangs have? What do the gang members have?
They don't care.
They're fully armed. They got all kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Prior to the Bruin decision, you had the subway shooting in New York City, where the guy went on the subway and I forget how many people he shot up. And, you know, the Solicitor General for New York in the Bruin case literally stated, oh, well, you know, we need to make the subways a gun-free zone because there's a lot of crowding there and there's a lot of people. Well, guess what? Your gun-free zone laws and your gun control laws didn't stop the guy from getting on the subway and shooting people. Well, what has stopped him is the people being able to legally defend themselves, because then that guy would have been like, wait, there's a lot of people on the subway. How many of them are armed? You know what? I don't want to mess with that.
Well, you just notice where all the mass bang-bangs occur. They occur in gun-free zones, usually, like military bases where you can't carry a firearm, schools where they can't have them, you know, all the places where it's excluded. That's where they go. That's what they seek out. There's a bunch of cowards, and they're not going to take any undue risk. So they seek out, even in Chicago at the Aurora Theater. That theater had a specific policy, no firearm. They said a guy passed through several theaters that didn't have a policy like that, and then singled out the one that had to know firearm.
Yes, the Aurora, Colorado shooting. Yep, I remember that instance. But you brought up that they're cowards. It's not that they're cowards, it's that they're predators. And if you look at nature, predators will go after the easy meal. Bingo. No lion on the Serengeti is going to go after the hardiest, fittest, strongest zebra or impala. They're going to go after the slow and the weak one. They're going to go after the one that's kind of lagging behind the herd. And guess what? Criminals do the same thing. They look for the easy mark. They look for, it doesn't matter if they're a mugger, if they're a serial killer, if they're a shooter, it doesn't matter. They look for the easy mark. If I pulled up these crime statistics of the city of Tallahassee, Florida's capital, and the city of Miami, and if the per capita population was even across the board, Tallahassee would have a much higher crime rate. You want to know why? Because 60,000 residents of Tallahassee are college students between Tallahassee Community College, FAMU, and FSU. And these campuses are gun-free zones. Every mugger, every burglar, every rapist on these campuses specifically know that they have a higher statistical chance of their victims being disarmed.
Wow.
So they ply their trades there. And I could give enough credit to TPD and FSU PD and FAMU PD and all these different agencies. But guess what? Again, as a cop, I can say this is the honest truth. When seconds count, we're minutes to an hour away. And it doesn't matter.
Well, you know what? You hear, yeah, exactly. You always hear all this stuff about people getting accosted on college campuses, especially women jogging, getting pulled over and raped, assaulted. And it happens more frequently on college campuses, it sounds like, when I hear reports than just about anything. So that kind of underscores what you're saying there. Scary situation. And the other thing is, you know, so many people on the side that is against us having a right to protect ourselves always say, well, just call the cops. Yeah, I've never had a cop respond in a timely manner. It takes a while for them to get to you. And all the burglars and criminals know that. They plan to be in and out before a cop would get there. That's their plan. That's their MO. And they know they got a little bit of time to do what they want to do, enough to do pretty much whatever they want to do. They can go, they can strike, do what they want, and get out before the cops ever arrive. I had an occasion where my ex-wife broke her leg. I'm up in the northwest part of the county. She was in the southeast part of the county. There was an ambulance station like 2 miles from her. And my daughter calls, my mama fell and broke her leg. You know, that can be very serious. You can get a bone go through a artery. You can bleed to death in minutes with a leg. And I said, call 911, get the ambulance there. She called 911. I drove all the way across county and I got there and there was no ambulance. No, nothing, nobody. And I'm gonna tell you, I got on the call to the ambulance place, I said, y'all get your rear ends here. There ain't nobody here. They go, oh, we're there. I said, oh, no, you're not. Yes, we're right there. I said, I'm standing right here. You ain't not here. There's nobody here. I had to argue with them and tell her. And then finally they get, about 10 or 15 minutes after I showed up, they pull up. I mean, I drove clear across county over 30.
I can tell you this from personal experience.
And I was speeding.
Within my 15-year career as a law enforcement officer, part of that was being a school resource officer.
Yeah.
And I was on campus, and as you know, most school campuses across the country, they're not small places. They're fairly large. It would take me between 3 to 5 minutes to run from one end of a campus to another. Now, if there was an active shooter situation at whatever school I was working at, would I run towards the sound of gunfire? You bet your butt I would. I would do my darndest to save and stop the shooter. But when seconds count, I was still minutes away. And I am a big time advocate of campus carry for teachers and faculty, because if I'm on one end of the campus and a gunman decides to get on the other end of the campus, that could literally save lives. Because we saw that exact instance in Parkland. We've seen that exact instance in Uvalde and in other places. And Parkland specifically, you had a known individual with a known history who was swept under the rug. Nicholas Cruz had over 30 points of contact with law enforcement. At no point did the Broward Sheriff's Office detain him for domestic violence, battery, assault, making threats, nothing. They swept it under the rug. Could he have been Baker acted? He could have. They did nothing. And when Nicholas Cruz stepped on campus, security knew already he was a threat. Half the faculty and staff knew already he was a threat, but they were all disarmed. And you had a coach use his body to shield students. Now, if that coach was armed, could he have stopped Cruz and could he have saved more lives? Possibly. Yeah. And you had an officer from the Broward County Sheriff's Office on campus, and that officer didn't engage the threat. That in of itself is reprehensible. But even if he did engage the threat, as we've seen in other instances across the country where you do have SROs that, they're not cowards, they do their job and they will put themselves on the line. It still takes time to get there. Campus carry is crucially and critically important, just as constitutional carry is. Again, we have armed staff to protect our money, and we have armed staff to protect our elected officials. Why aren't we protecting the most vitally important resource, our children?
Bingo, exactly. You know what? I'm gonna tell you something. I grew up in Alabama, right here. And when I was a kid, we took guns to school. I mean, they were in the gun racks and the guys' pickup trucks, And I had a cap and ball revolver and a muzzle loading rifle that I walked through school on show and tell dress up day, carrying the rifle and the cap and ball revolver with a strap down holster. I mean, all I had to do was slip the caps on it and it was ready to fire. But, I said, he said, Greg, talk about it. Tell us what you got. I'd get up and I'd talk about it. Everybody loved it. Nobody even thought anything about it. Nobody was scared. Nobody thought about violence. I didn't think about such crazy stuff. I mean, we had a culture that was accepting of that, and there was no such thing as school shootings. They didn't exist. It didn't happen. But after they said you couldn't bring stuff to campus, that's when it started. Back in that day, there was no such thing. There was no gun violence on the school campus at all, but we brought guns to school. I would walk through the school and in classrooms carrying them, and nobody thought a thing about it. They thought it was cool.
One of the biggest things, and I know I'm going to misattribute the quote and I'm going to butcher the quote, but I believe it comes from an older Mazda executive, Mazda, the car company, an older Japanese executive. And basically he said, I plant a seed for a tree knowing I will never be able to sit under its shade and enjoy its fruit. But I do this because I know future generations will. Meaning that he is planting knowledge, knowing that or he's doing things knowing that future generations will benefit from it. And one of the things that we need to do as a society is we need to invest heavily in our future generations. We need to invest in our children. One of the things that I want to introduce back in schools is scholastic shooting sports, is have varsity and JV small bore rifle and pistol teams. And same thing with air rifle and air pistol teams for the middle schoolers.
I was on a rifle team in high school. We had a rifle team.
That would reintroduce a number of things to the kids. One, proper firearm safety,
right,
and safe handling. Two, it would remove the mystique and the mystery of firearms. It would make it back to being a normal everyday thing. And three, it would actually educate the faculty and staff, because it would be like, oh, okay, hey, yeah, we have a rifle team. Oh, okay, cool. It's no longer like, oh my God. And that's a big thing. We have removed firearms from the normal part of society. And part of it is between rural and urbanization. Going further and further into the past, the country was more agrarian, more rural. And that meant, people had firearms for specific tasks on the farm. It was to protect livestock, it was to protect the crop, it was to provide food on the table. And as we became more of an urbanized society, the role of the firearm changed from being a tool on the farm to being a tool for self-defense or a leisure activity. Skeet shooting, trap shooting, rifle shooting, bullseye shooting, things of that sort. But when we shifted from a rural to an urban society, a lot of the population moved into cities like New York and other jurisdictions that heavily controlled gun ownership because it was a tool for political control. It was a tool to specifically disarm people they didn't like. Blacks, Italians, Chinese, Hispanics. We could go through the history across the country. Gun control is specifically rooted in bigotry and racism. And one of the, you have all of these politicians saying, oh, I'm not racist, I'm not. Then why do you support gun control? Why is it that I could literally look at the law that was overturned in the Bruin decision, the 1911 Sullivan Act, and know that it was specifically passed by the political machine at the time to specifically disarm Southern and Eastern European immigrants moving into New York? Why is it that I could look at states like Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas, and see that their entire permitting system was designed to disarm blacks? I could go out west and see that it was the same thing to disarm Asians. We all know the truth. What we need to do is be loud and be proud as gun owners. Gun rights and the Second Amendment is a civil rights issue. I'm sorry, you were going to say.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize the NRA was established to train black people how to use firearms. A lot of people don't realize that was its original history. I mean, I don't know if in other directions, but that was original history of groups that formed to protect firearm rights.
Yeah, there's a history where armed people are free. My Uncle Mario said it best. My Uncle Mario was born in Cuba, came to the United States, and was recruited by the CIA and actually took part in the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Wow.
And I remember as a child sitting on his steps in Flegami, a neighborhood in Miami, Florida. And I remember him basically telling me, disarmed people are slaves of the state, armed people are free. Never in humanity's history has an armed people been enslaved. Never. Whether they were victims of National Socialism and the Nazis, communism in Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, China, the Soviet Union, whether they were victims of oppression in Africa, of tribalism and warlord and despotism, or military juntas in Latin America. Every totalitarian dictatorship, whether it's left wing or right wing, they all share something in common. They disarmed the public. Fidel Castro, soon after he gained political power, One of the first ththings he said in Havana was, "Armas por qué?" Arms, why? Guns, why? Why do you need guns? We'll protect you. And look how that turned out. We've had hundreds of thousands of my fellow Cubans flee their homeland on rafts built with the most rickety pieces of garbage over shark-infested waters to reach Florida to try to enjoy the ideas of freedom and liberty. Freedom and liberty that a lot of people in this country take for granted. Because
and
the
they're
biggest
pulling the hand away for socialism and communism. I see groups protesting, and I've seen people get speak of communism as the answer. I've heard that from certain groups out there. I'm going, really? You have no clue what you're talking about. You know, show me a communist system anywhere where it's not a one-party system, because they can't handle any competition because it's so awful. Any competition will knock it out. So they have to be dictatorial and to dictate that only their party can survive, because any other party will knock them out of power because it is so bad. But every one-party system in the world becomes extremely corrupt and tyrannical, and especially when it's of that ilk. So it don't work. I mean, just the economics of it don't work, because it disincentivizes production and good things that builds a good sound economy. And then on top of that, you've got the tyranny that goes along with it. But yet the kids here have been schooled with the idea that that's the way to go. That's the only way to be fair. It's the route to social justice, blah, 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 blah. And they don't realize they're setting themselves up to be slaves. This fly bait, it might taste sweet to them according to the way their culture to believe the message they're getting. But once they got it, they're going to discover that fly bait's poison. They're going to discover they're in shackles. And that's where I'm afraid this country's heading if we don't wake up. That's why I've done a lot of videos on freedom in the past, but they're not appreciated by the younger set. So somehow we got to find a way to reach out and communicate that also.
The biggest thing I want to send as a message to your listeners is this: political apathy is apathy. Apathy leads to death, whether it's political or it's physical. And you need to be politically active. And you need to be active on the local level. You need to be active on your county level, on your state level, and on the federal level. Be loud and be proud when it regards to your individual rights and freedoms. Because remember, our rights, they're not granted by government. They are enumerated by government. Just to reiterate, the Constitution doesn't, all the rights listed in the Bill of Rights, they're not granted to you by the Constitution. When the founders wrote the Bill of Rights, they wrote it to enumerate, to specifically list these rights will not be infringed by government because you are born with them. They are inalienable. They are given to you by your creator. And with that, you have to exercise your rights. And our rights are interconnected. Our Second Amendment right backs our First Amendment right. Our First Amendment rights allow us to protect our Second Amendment rights. Our Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights keep us free and secure. And we have the four boxes. We have the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box. And I pray to God we never have to get to that fourth box. So exercise the soap box, exercise the ballot box, and exercise the jury box. Be proactive as a citizen. Be politically involved. Now, of course, I could always say, hey, go to gunowners.org and join GOA. It's just $25 a year. And that would be great. And that would be great. But, and we don't waste any money, but even if you don't do that, I want you to be involved. I want you to get politically active, because that's what's important. The biggest issue we have, whether it's the elections, whether it's political officials, is apathy. If you look at most people, and look, I understand, we're all trying to keep a roof over our heads. We're all trying to put food on the table. We're all trying to keep clothes on our back. We're all trying to provide for our families. I understand it takes time, and it takes time away from work. It takes time away from family. But if our founding fathers pledged their sacred lives and their honor to establish this country and protect the liberties we were born with, we could pledge our time and our effort and our energy to protect what they laid as a core foundation.
Amen.
That's the honest truth.
Amen.
We were given a republic, and we were given these freedoms we need to keep them secure. And that means we need to be vigilant as citizens. So I want to leave it at that. Get involved. Be loud, be proud as gun owners, be loud and be proud as constitutionalists. And it doesn't matter if they're left-wing or right-wing politicians. Keep the pressure on them.
Yeah. So just real quick, I'm going to share a site that I'm sure some of my members have seen before, and I'll let you share a site here. We've got this Freedom Restoration Foundation, guys. If y'all haven't been to our website, check it out. And we got a group you can join on Facebook by the same name. And we got an action center that you can go into, and it just gives all kind of alerts, and you can see a lot of details to follow when you click the down arrow on the alert. We try to fill this stuff full of information. And then you come down here and we tell you that you can make your voices count, and we give you the basics of it. We tell you how to track bills at the national level, how to track bills at the state level, how to find your state legislators, how to find out who your representative in the Congress is, how to find out who your senators are. We give you this Capitol switchboard number where you can reach either the House members or the Senate members. You can actually call them, call their offices, tell them what you think. You can send an email, we cover that, calling, writing, and what to write, what to say on the telephone. And then here's a recap of all those resources, guys. This is one of the best websites to pull all that together. And right now, we're not charging a membership fee on this. We just ask that you take action. We try to put stuff up here. We do need volunteers to help run some of this stuff. And then Gun Owners of America, $25 a year. That is cheap. That is a great bargain, guys, especially for what they do. They're one of the most active in defense of our freedoms of any group out there. So I will let you, if you want to pull up that site. You've got the share on your side. You can pull it up.
I always forget how to do it. I'm never technically savvy. Let's see, what is it that I click here?
There's a big button right in the middle of the screen at the bottom that says share. And then you
there we go.
Whatever you want to share on. You see it?
There we go. So this is our website. This is Gun Owners of America. This is our national website. And we actually have a lot here. So we do national and state alerts. That's one of the things you get if you join GOA, you get alerts on both national and state alerts. We also have our action center, and our action center is just as what it says. It's a call to action. So we cover different issues on it. And in our state alerts, for instance, so if you click our state alerts, you could contact your elected officials on certain issues. Same thing on the national system. We ask for the same thing. We keep you up to date. We have our industry partners. Other things we have is we actually have some different outreach programs. We have Second Amendment Hunters. That is our hunter outreach program. We also have our Empowered 2A. This is our women's outreach specifically because, look, here's the honest truth. An armed society is a polite society, and the old saying, God created man, Samuel Colt made him equal. My wife, I love her. She's tough. She's a fighter, but she's 5'2" and she's 120 pounds. If she's going up against a 6'2", 250 pounds, there's a disparity of force. But guess what? That firearm levels that.
Amen.
Some of the other things we do is we are rolling out a student initiative for college age individuals. So we're across the board. We do a lot of things.
That's good. I like that, guys. That's an organization worthy of your support. I highly encourage people to consider supporting that organization too. So go in there and do what you can. If you can afford to join, by all means, join.
One thing I forgot to mention. I'm sorry. Just to share the screen again here.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's real simple to join us. Just go to gunowners.org/join. That's it.
So hard.
And like I said, our annual membership is just $25 a year.
Right.
You could join and you could give an additional donation. You could also just do straight donations to GOA. And again, one of the biggest things is we do not frivolously spend your funds. And as the state director, I travel between Pensacola to Key West and everywhere in between. And as our other state directors, our regional directors, and our federal folks, I don't travel between my state in a private jet. I don't have a limo. I don't have $3,000 bespoken suits. I have this nice little shirt with my name embroidered, GOA embroidered on it. And I drive in my pickup truck. And that's what I do. And I go across the state to educate gun owners. I speak before our legislature. I lobby before our legislature. And I make sure that every penny that I have access to is spent properly, because we're not here to do frivolous things. We want to make sure that that money goes towards the fight. And the fight is very simple. It's freedom and liberty. And I want to end it on this. Our national motto is E pluribus unum, out of many one. My family came to the United States in 1961 from communist Cuba.
Wow.
I don't care if you're like me, if you could trace your ancestry back to the Mayflower or anywhere in between. We're all Americans. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're black, Hispanic, Asian, gay, straight. I don't care. That's not the issue. We're all together. That's what makes this country great. And I want to thank you for letting me be on your show. I want to thank your listeners for hearing me out. And thank you for what you and your organization does too, because together we all share that same fight. We all have that same burning desire for freedom in our hearts. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you for coming on here. And we need to talk about how we can collaborate on some stuff in the future. We're a fledgling little organization. We're trying. You can see what we're about. We're nowhere, on the scale of you guys. We're like a grain of sand compared to the beach when you look at the difference between us and you. But
hey,
I appreciate what you're doing.
The one thing that matters, and we can look at our founding fathers as a history, you had all these individual groups and individual folks. They got together and they made the greatest country in the world.
That's right.
And we could keep this being the greatest country in the world and the freest country in the world. And again, it works by working together. E pluribus unum, out of many one.
There's no reason it can't be. We got to wake people up and change the course. We got to grab the reins of this horse that's running down the cliff and rein it in and get it going back uphill. And it's absolutely still doable. I believe that. And I also believe that, if you got the faith of a mustard seed, you can grow into a big plant. You know what I mean? I planted some giant mustard too. There's some, we have some big varieties here. It starts in a little bitty tiny seed. So, and that's why I have a lot of faith in a small organization. I've had experience with small organizations having huge impacts and things in the government, because I was the chairman of the policy committee of the National Space Society, the head of the phone tree before that, and we have made some huge differences. So if you get in there and really work it, you can have effect. A lot of people think they can't have effect. That's not true. You really can, but you got to push it. So that's something I want people to understand. Has anybody got a question real quick? We're about to end the video here.
By all means, I'm open to questions.
Last call for questions, folks. Pop up here, say something. If you want to ask a question, this is your opportunity. So, a minute. It takes there's a little delay and things popping up. So, yep. Yeah, folks in here aren't exactly happy with Wayne from NRA. This fancy.
I don't discuss that. That's between them and. Our product speaks for itself. We don't talk about other organizations, nor we don't talk bad or good. It's our product speaks for itself.
There you go. That's the main thing. I mean, everything has got its place, and I've been a member of that. I'm not presently in it, but I wouldn't mind throwing a few pennies there if they do some good, But guys, we Billy Boy don't want his name on a list. Well, hey, you don't have to be on a list if you participate with Freedom Restoration Foundation. We don't actually even have a real membership unless you join our Facebook group. But that's not a monetary commitment. That's just hey, get up and do something. That's the main thing, guys. Just get out and do something. And you can go to our website without joining any group at all. and take action. Well, that's what we're trying to do, guys. So yeah, Martha's Vineyard got a taste of reality. No kidding. That's a good thing. Artie, Louis, I really appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on here. Drop me a line anytime. If something's bugging you or if you got an idea where we can collaborate on something, let me know.
Hey, all I know is thanks for having me. Alabama is a great state. I have been out to the CMP South store a number of times and spent some good money, some good hard-earned money out there.
Very good.
And I got to say, you guys have got some good barbecue in some spots. So
that's right.
I always like being out there.
That's right. We like our barbecue here. Pulled pork, ribs, and butt, you know, all that stuff. Bama butt.
Well,
we
again, thank you for having me on. It's fantastic, and keep up the good work.
You too. Thank you, sir. And with that, I want to say thank you everyone for watching. I want to thank all the people that gave us super chats. We finally got 95 thumbs up. If you haven't given me a thumbs up, guys, this platform has been beating me down hard. So please respond with that. I thank you for that. Mods, you've done an amazing job tonight. Thank all you, and just thank everybody for watching. Thank you for being here. Hey, Connie, how you doing? Thank you all for being here more than anything. So with that, I'm going to say thank you again, and